In the previous meeting minutes and consent items.
Chair Jackson, I apologize. Can you start over? We are ready to go now.
No problem. Welcome everyone to the June 27th meeting of the City of Lacey Commission on Equity. I call the meeting to order and we move into our agenda with the first item being that of the approval of the agenda, previous meeting minutes and consent items. Is there a motion?
To approve the agenda.
We have a motion to approve the agenda, the previous meeting minutes and the consent items. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. And please let the record show that we are joined by Zoom of Commissioner Sauer and Commissioners Hart. Thank you very much for joining us. With that, do we have any public comment? I see no member of the public in attendance by Zoom. And are there any persons by telephone?
Chair Jackson, there are no individuals by telephone.
Thank you. With that then, we were to have an inspirational item today by Commissioner Hedgewood. And I do not see him online, so let us forego that item. And let him know that we will move him to the July agenda, that he's not off the hook. So we'll look to Commissioner Hedgewood for our inspirational item for July.
And Chair Jackson, Commissioner Hedgewood may join us a little bit later this evening. Just for anybody who might be watching, we did have some technical difficulties to start this meeting. We have now started it, and I know Commissioner Hedgewood has indicated that he would be joining, so hopefully he will be joining in just a second.
Great.
I also do just want to take a second to recognize that we did receive one written public comment that was sent out to all of the commissioners in advance of this meeting.
Yes. Did all of you see that attachment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good. So if Commissioner Hedgewood joins us later, we will insert him for his inspirational item at an appropriate place on the agenda. Maybe not at the beginning, but maybe the end. So we look forward to him joining us. With that, let's move into our business items.
All right, well, our first business item for this evening, commissioners, is a return to our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan workshops. And I am happy to see Tevin here joining us this evening. I know it's been a couple of months as we've done some other business.
We missed you. Welcome
Joel
back.
too. Great to be back.
So for this evening, we'll be going over focus areas and impact statements and strategies. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tevin.
Great. Thank you so much, Shannon. Thanks all for having me again. So today we're going to work with these real are for the strategic planning process that we have planned. We're going to do a hybrid activity where folks joining via Zoom are going to be able to participate using what's called a Jamboard. I'm going to walk through what that looks like and how we're going to use that. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about the strategic plan as far as indicators are concerned. So in our agenda, we have some definitions of impact statements, and indicators. Perfect. Thank you so much. Before this piece on impact indicators, we also have some example focus areas from other strategic plans that have a DEI kind of nexus. And what I want to share about the various city plans that are strategic plans that focus on DEI is they're all very different. And so when we talk about, where do we want to house cultural competence or human services, folks are doing it differently across the nation. Some of these strategic plans read more like equity assessments where folks have been provided recommendations. Some of them read as strategic plans where these are currently being implemented, and they have various levels of reporting. And so these are just meant to be examples for everyone that we can look to, if we're curious to know, well, how are some other folks planning some of these DEI strategies? How are they grouping focus areas, and what are they saying about these focus areas? So that's the first part I wanted to mention. The next portion here, impact. So actual or intended changes in human development as measured by people's well-being, improvements in people's lives. An example is a vibrant cultural sector that fosters a creative, cohesive community. So that's the impact we want. That's what the goal is. Impact statement, ultimate benefits for target population. And I want to go back up to one example here that I thought was pretty great. As an impact statement for workforce equity, a racial equity culture, I think that produces a workforce with diverse representation at all city employment levels, an inclusive workplace culture, and meaningful engagement by all employees. So that's really a statement as to what are we trying to get at here when we talk about workforce equity. So that's just one example. And something to keep in mind as we're thinking through these things is indicators. So this is a measure of progress against impact. If change is happening, how will we know? The answer to this question is indicators. What are the indicators of impact in each focus area? So we want to think about not just that we have a strategy, but that this strategy is measurable. Not that we just have impact statements, but we can draw a clear line between that impact and how far along we are to achieve it. And so this is a lot of the work that we've been wanting to kind of get at for some time now. And today we're going to talk about strategies, impact statements. Prior to us jumping in though, we thought it would be great to just take a moment to reflect upon the draft vision statement that we created together, the draft mission statement that we've created together. Again, these are drafts. So looking at strategies and looking at impact and impact statements, we want to, hold these things close to us. So before we jump into Jamboard, I want to pause there and ask if there's any questions on impact statements, the strategic planning process, how it might play a role. If folks have any questions thus far, and I know we're going to get to some of this a little bit later on.
As you define impact statement and indicators, would it be appropriate to also define what baseline data is?
Oh, absolutely. So baseline data
Where we're
is
starting, where we're trying to go, and then the indicator, where are we along that continuum?
yes, exactly. Thank you for that. So baseline data is really going to be where are we starting, exactly as you put it. So we can work backwards from there. So instead of saying like, for this strategy, we may come up with a new strategy that there's no baseline data for. It may not be available, and that would tell us that we want to collect that data. So as we move along and we're looking at strategies and thinking through, well, how do we measure this? We're going to want to say, well, what information do we have available right now? What could tell us? And so things like employee
Diversity.
exactly, that would be something that may be available. Correct. And we can work from there to say like, okay, well, we started here and 1 year we want to be, in a different place, and we could track progress that way. So baseline data being very important to the process. So thank you for highlighting that.
And then when I'm looking here at what we've already talked about, but something's jumping in my mind.
Mhm.
Lacey is a community where, and that first bullet, change starts by listening. And as I look at that, the word action comes into mind. So we listen, then what do we do? From an equity commission point of view, we start by listening. Then what do we do with what we heard as we listen? So the word action or doing or something, as we have these values or whatever in these bullets with the verb, that just jumped in my mind as I read this now, and it didn't come to me when we were in discussion about it several months ago. Am I making any sense? So we celebrate diversity, opportunities are equitable, partnerships are cultivated, barriers to full participation are eliminated, and accountable. So, well, am I making any sense? After we listen, how does the change come about?
Yeah,
What action?
absolutely. And I'm wondering if other commissioners, is this resonating with you all as well?
Yeah,
Am I
I mean,
making any sense?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna have indicators, you can't get to an indicator without doing something. So I imagine that has to be a piece of it.
Yeah, and talking with community members who are learning more about the Equity Commission and that we exist, that's the question they have. What do you guys do? What are you doing?
Mhm.
What are you gonna do? Tough questions,
Yeah.
at this point.
And hopefully where we get to is a place where we can point them in the direction of a strategic plan, which will highlight exactly what the commission is up to and where it hopes to be in the next few years. So what I can do is think through how we can add action to the vision.
Yeah.
And maybe provide some options as far as some of that more active role that we want to play in seeing change.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments or anything before we jump into the next section from anyone?
No, I just think that is important because, you know, talking to people in the populations that we're talking to, if we don't have action and they come to us and they, you know, give us information and they have concerns and we just take it and don't do anything, that's kind of breaking trust, which is not, we don't want to start off doing that.
Absolutely.
Commissioners, what I hear you saying is having, an express statement that's saying action on how we're going to achieve the rest of the vision, in perpetuity. And I think I just want to, and I think it's a wonderful idea, but also to remind, the mission being, what are we trying to achieve and the vision, or how are we going to achieve? And then the vision being that overall, here's where the community is. And I think it's an excellent idea to incorporate that into it, being that it's going to continue into the future, even as we've achieved that vision for the city of Lacey.
Thank you.
Great. So what I want to do is I want to walk us through the various tables. So this is what I wanted to explain. Hello.
Hi, Annie.
So I want to walk us through what I was explaining when we first started is tables. So what we have printed out here is part of tables. And these tables are consolidated focus areas and impact statements. And so we're in the process of co-creating these. And so they're 100% meant to be updated or revised. We're going to chat about them. So for folks who aren't here in person, we have a printed version of these tables. And then for folks joining virtually, I'm going to walk us through how we can all comment via Jamboard. So we're really having the same experience with this work. So I just want to walk us through what we have in front of us so we know how to kind of work through this. So this is a draft, this is a consolidated focus area. So the work we did prior to now was listing all the various focus areas. So similar to how we have in these examples and these other strategies, there are focus areas, supplier diversity, community engagement, workforce equity. So we had a long list, and what we wanted to say is, let's start to group some of these focus areas so that they're housed in a consolidated focus area. So this was our attempt to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how we've done that and determine if we want to make any changes. So this is just 3 focus areas. So these can all be changed, updated. We can change the terminology, and we're focusing on the first 3. However, as we see here in the grayed out area, there are others. And so some of these we haven't named yet, and we can do that together, but we want to just focus on 3 for today as kind of part 1 in this series. Any questions on, how these were organized before we jump into the next part? I'll just pause there for a moment.
The one that is missing from me, and maybe it's your second consolidated focus area, but we talk about community access and engagement. We've talked about the need for courageous conversations on race and racism, as such a huge part of any discussion on equity. And as we're putting this out here, given the world in which we live today, we cannot skirt around the courageous conversation this community needs on race and racism. And seem to me it would fall under that second consolidated focus area you have here.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that. So we're going to have an opportunity to take a look at strategies and make sure that what we have here is complete. So this is by no means done yet, and this is actually part of the activity. And that's exactly the kind of feedback we're looking for. And so I want to say yes, and we're going to absolutely collect that up and incorporate it. But as far as just how we have this laid out, did anyone have questions? You know, that these were consolidated, that these are focus areas, and these impact statements are drafts, and we're gonna just walk through with those. So, okay, great. So no questions there.
One thing to just add on there, commissioners, like Tevin mentioned, I mean, we're diving into kind of, you know, things that we really want to spend more time focusing on each of our next meetings. So this is really just part one. And, you know, these are all drafts. We don't know how far along we're going to get in tonight's conversation. So certainly, you know, if we need to pick this back up in a future conversation, just focused on these 3 items, we can. So I do want to make sure that you all know that we can have more time if it is necessary to continue and make sure that we hit all of the conversations that we need to have within these items, and that we're going to do the same thing as we continue to progress with the other consolidated areas. And as Tevin has mentioned, all of these are drafts. We're really here tonight to hear your feedback on, you know, is this complete, or are there items that you think should be changed, edited, added, like Chair Jackson, the comment that you just had? That's what we want to do with the visioning, not the visioning, but the exercise that we're about to do here moving forward. So I just want to keep that in mind, that this might, you know, we might get a couple of areas in tonight and have to pick this up at a next meeting, and we'll certainly be going on to the rest of the items on the list as well in subsequent meetings.
Thank you for that indulgence of my input. It's just some things that I just think need to be upfront and not consolidated out, but we've got to come back later on where it's so important to the work, to all the work we're trying to do. So that's my only concern. As I flip through the pages and certain things I don't see, I'm just commenting where I think is the best opportunity to insert that in the conversation. So thanks for indulging me.
Yeah, much appreciated. All right, so this is the first part that we're going to go through, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about draft strategies. So how this piece of the agenda comes together is what we heard so far. So this is community engagement and visioning efforts, and this is for each consolidated focus area. So these bullets.
Can I have a question real quick? This is Kim.
Yes.
Okay, so if you can go back, I mean, if you can remind me, I don't know if I'm the only one, how was this something that we worked on before? Where did we come from? Original focus area, things like that.
Yes, so this comes from our wish list exercise and various other exercises that we've walked through, just to say like, hey, you know, if we wanted to make all the change, let's just list it out without having to put too many like parameters around it. So really creating a wish list, you know, here's all the change we want to see. And we found out we can actually group that change into categories. And let me know if that answers your question, or we could go into more detail.
Okay, so this actually come from us, or was this come from someplace else?
It comes from this group, and it also comes from listening. And so this is just a consolidated focus areas from everything that we've heard thus far. So
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
no problem at all.
Commissioner Sauer, if you go back to the Commission on Equity's meeting back in March and April, that is where the original focus areas started was with the visioning exercise. And that was partially based off of what we heard through the community engagement exercise. And then also what we were seeing when we reviewed very broadly some other draft strategic plans.
Okay, great. Thank you. I thought so, but then I wasn't quite so sure. Time goes by and I forget.
Nope, totally fine. Great. So here we are, right? So what we heard so far in bullet points, and then what we're gonna walk through today is strategies, right? And this is where we're gonna really dive into, do we have everything covered? Is everything that should be here represented? So with that, we're gonna just take it one piece at a time. I'm gonna open up Jamboard for folks who are joining via Zoom. I want to walk through how to use Jamboard. And just to confirm, does everyone have the link to Jamboard that's joining virtually?
Yeah, I'm on there now.
Okay, great. So just a quick learn how to use Jamboard if you've not used it before. This is the tool panel on this side, and you're just gonna want to click this little sticky note. You click it, you can type into it, you can change the color, and then you can click save, and that sticky note will pop up. So it's very much the same experience folks joining in person will have. You can delete your sticky. And then just to make sure that everyone is able to use this and you have access, you understand how to use it, we're gonna grab a sticky and just put your name on your sticky. So you don't have to do an interesting fact, but just put your name on your sticky and we'll know that you have access. So to move forward and backward a page, you're going to use this button at the top, which will click us forward or backwards. We're going to start just on this page. So once I see your name on your sticky, I'll know that you got it and you're in, and we'll be able to get feedback from you.
Do you see mine already? I put it, I think, on the first board. I see Kim's.
Let's see here.
Commissioner Clay, yes, we can see yours and we appreciate the interesting fact.
I don't really see where mine is. I was, it made me download the app. And then when I'm on the app, it doesn't say anything. So.
Hopefully you shouldn't have to download an app. If you follow the link and this does not come up, just this exact same first page that we're all seeing, we might want to double check that link.
I'm having trouble with my. My tablet, and then I'm on my phone to talk to you all. And then this, I don't know. Do I have to add my address?
It shouldn't ask for, so you don't even actually need a Google account to access this link. So it shouldn't, if you're following the link that you were sent, it should take you directly to this page. So I would say maybe double
It
check.
doesn't. I'm sorry. I was not even able to link to the meeting on my tablet. So I'm just doing everything on my phone. Let's see. So how I can go back and have both things going at once? Is that what you're saying? Let me see.
Try that,
Be
Commissioner
able
Clay.
to do, will she be able to do it on her phone and also be on Zoom?
I'm not sure if it's compatible with phones. However, what we can do is we can create, I can take notes on my side and I can make a sticky from my side if you want to vocalize your feedback for each of these steps. And that's one way that we can, if you're not able to access it, we can still.
Yeah, no, it's too goofy. I think it's because I'm in North Carolina. Mhm.
And commissioners, we will go page by page through the Jamboard, and the commissioners here in the room also have a very similar setup. So Tevin, do you want to explain?
Yes, so very similar to how folks joining via Zoom will grab a sticky, we're all going to also take our sticky. So I find that this is really great for just making sure we're collecting feedback from everyone, because time is limited and I want to make sure that we're hearing from everyone. So what we'll do is we'll start with table A, and what we have here is a first consolidated focus area, which is workforce and work environment. Here are the original focus areas that have been consolidated. And the question is, does this grouping of focus areas seem complete? Does this grouping of focus areas seem complete? And that's really the only question to answer on this slide. And so you can grab a sticky here and actually answer. And then if you're in person, you're gonna write on your sticky any comments that you wanna make, and we'll make sure that they're addressed even if we run out of time, we'll make sure that they're still addressed. So that's gonna be the first activity for everyone. So you're all gonna grab a sticky, either in person or virtual, and answer this question.
So for the commissioners who are here in person, I've provided you all of the Jamboard slides in front of you in the packet. In addition, you'll see a sticky notes. So, please feel free to write whatever notes you want to take on the Jamboards. And then when you're ready to write up a sticky note, use the sticky note, because very much like the commissioners here who are participating remotely, we want to put it up on our Jamboard over here on the wall so that everybody can see the sticky notes of the other commissioners.
Mhm. And please let me know if you have any questions at all.
So when
So
you are-
read the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sauer.
So we're trying to add more. I mean, if I see anything that need to be added here, to put them in a sticky note and post it here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, you may not have, anything to comment on here. So the question is, does this grouping of focus areas seem complete? And you can, for example, say, yes. Oops. Yes. And then just save it. And also, I almost forgot, if you are joining virtually, if you could please include your name with your sticky note, so we know who it is. So this would be, yep, I feel like this feels complete. That's perfect. We've recorded it and we know we can move on. So that's just an example. And Commissioner Clay, if you would like to comment and you're not able to access the Jamboard, feel free to just speak it out and I'll make sure I can even create a sticky note for you if you'd like.
Okay, if I think the 4 things in the first box, the second box is adequately describes them, consolidates them.
Great, thank you so much for that feedback.
So all I see on the screen right now is 3 in workforce development diversity. So 3 in is it the green, and then 4 in blue? That's what we are commenting on.
So just these here, and well, actually everything in green. So this is the grouping. So we have workforce development, diversity.
Commissioner Sauer, can you see Commissioner Hart's sticky note?
Yes.
Great, okay, I just wanted to double check, we could all see the same screen. With that, continue on, Devin, sorry.
Okay, great. Yep, so this is exactly what we're asking about. So this grouping, so these have been grouped, they're consolidated. So just, if this feels complete, we're actually going to start with folks joining virtually. The nice thing about a sticky is we can go person by person just to, inquire. So Commissioner Hart, I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on your sticky here about feeling like we could expand on this specifically. If you could share more about which areas could be expanded.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Commissioner Hart, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I was actually editing my sticky. I hope
Oh,
I'm
okay, no
going the
problem.
I hope I'm going the right direction with this, but what I was thinking, and I may not express this as well written or even speaking it, but in my experience working and not having a ton of experience as far as going on to college, I think that it would be a good idea to maybe include mentorship or life experience, because I always felt as if I was stifled because I didn't have the education that other people did, but I also pick up on things a lot quicker. I'm a quick learner and a quick study. So when I say expand on it, I'm looking kind of at what people are good at. You know, it may not be academically, but they may have a specialty in other things. So I'm not really sure how to put that in writing, but that's what I meant on mentoring or some type of OJT within the workforce.
Yeah, and that's great feedback. And it also sounds like that feedback is a strategy. And I'm just gonna skip us forward. So if everyone else could stay on tab 2, that'd be great. But I'm just gonna skip us forward to a section where we actually talk about strategies. And I think mentorship, life experience, as you mentioned, sounds like a great strategy that's housed within this focus area.
Okay.
And so if we're feeling good about the consolidated focus areas, we still have opportunity to discuss specific strategies within each of them. And I think that would fit really well. Anything around mentorship or life experience as a strategy under the consolidated focus area, if that makes sense.
Okay. So basically with this, we're just kind of spitballing. It may or may not fall there, but it may fall someplace else. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Great.
So I think like workforce development is kind of a broad term. And that could include a lot of things like even what Commissioner Hart was just saying, you know, hiring practices, you know, just cultural makeup, I mean, diversity, makeup of the workforce. What does it adequately represent the actual community? I mean, all of that I think fits under there. It's just a very broad term. I think it's just important that everyone's on the same page of what all could fall under that term.
Agreed.
Absolutely. And we may be able to capture, you know, so this impact statement is what we want to see within this focus area. So maybe this is something we can capture in the impact statement. If we're feeling like, you know, what is it that we're trying to see for workforce development? This is how we're defining it, or at least how we're defining that future state. But thank you for that. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, I like what you had to say about the hiring practice. You know, how are you finding the diversity? Are you going to colleges and finding, you know, multiple, I don't know, races, multiple abilities, or are you just going out in the community? How are you finding where to hire different folks?
Yeah, and even like looking at when job descriptions are being posted, what the qualifications are and what is actually needed to do the job, because certain qualifications just rule a large group of people out. But it's just always kind of been that way.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily needed for the job. But I think all of that falls under workforce development, unless I'm not understanding that.
Yeah, well, it looks like we'll get to those when we talk about draft strategies. Then we start first we sort of package it in a big form, and then we start unpackaging it and get some details.
So we want to be broad and then drill down later on as we go.
Well, not necessarily. We can be very specific. So before we move to the next one, I'll just give you a sneak peek here, and you should be able to see it too. Does this impact statement seem complete? Any additions, edits, questions, concerns? And that is this impact statement here, right? So if we want to be even more specific with this impact statement, absolutely, we're gonna incorporate that feedback. So for this section though, there's some folks in person who haven't been able to contribute just yet. So I'll pause for folks here if you had something that you wanted to talk about as far as this consolidation is concerned, and then we'll move forward to the actual impact statement.
Yes, well, I wrote a sticky and says, in addition to those things they talked about, I was focused on like total rewards. which could
Totally what, Cliff?
total rewards,
Oh,
which
reward,
could
okay.
include compensation, recognition, promotions, those types of things. So when you're developing your workforce, those are the things that need to be made clear to them. If I come on board, here's my compensation and this is how it works and how the promotions work. Oh, am I gonna be recognized every 5 years, 10 years, or how does that work? Am I gonna be recognized publicly, or a note from the mayor or something of those types of things help a person to feel a part of an organization. And they feel confident that, yes, I can grow and I'll be recognized. I can feel good about this organization, which adds to loyalty and those things. The other thing that's not mentioned is technology. Now, I don't know how we weave that in. I know not my generation is technology is something we have to talk about because it's learned. We had to learn it. Many of your generation, it's an afterthought. You were born with it, you grew up with it, you use it, that's the way it is. But with a progressive organization, technology is ever changing. And I just remember the last 10 years of my employment, every 18 months or 2 years, I have to learn new applications. And they get a new vendor and you switch over to do the same job, you use a different vendors whose application is different. And then, Microsoft, what you get Edge, you get Google this, you get Edge, and they keep changing. And so there are differences and it takes time. You have to apply some time. And it was important to afford development time for employees to be able to make sure that they are using the new technology and ever-changing technology as efficiently as possible. So those things are very important, in an organization and to the person themselves to say, as things change, I get time to learn those new applications, those types of things. Whereas the younger generations, something new, click over, go through the module, you got it. But there are different types of learning processes that we go through.
Yeah, if I can ask, is that something that you feel would be to include as a strategy as far as providing some of that technology learning or development? Because it kind of falls within that category, which I see is very clear. And so is that a strategy that we're wanting to incorporate, or are you wanting to capture something else for this specific focus area?
Maybe not a strategy, with a city like, Lacey is probably very progressive and it's not that big of a challenge. You don't have a large employee group that needs to use that much technology on a daily basis. You have people in various departments and all that, use bits and pieces of it. So maybe not a strategy, but it's woven into the development, workforce development piece somehow, some mention of, technology or whatever.
So essentially you're speaking to, what you all are speaking to is tying into the recruitment and retention piece on how we make it more equitable and inclusive as a whole when it comes to workforce development. So from the recruitment side of the house, what are we talking about in terms of bringing on new employees, making sure that they match the necessary skill set that the employer is requiring. But at the same time, how do we make things more equitable and inclusive as a whole for the target audience in itself, right? And then while you're in the workforce, from a retention standpoint, the recognition of employees, that do the job, making them feel more inclusive as a whole within the workplace environment. And then at the same time, also providing them opportunities for them to excel and to perform and to grow within the workforce environment, providing them those opportunities to move forward and progress within the workplace that they're in through various different positions or
Yeah.
other promotions, et cetera, and providing them the necessary tools that they're required to have.
Yeah, I think, you nail it with that. And when I recruited, say, IT people, the people that's gonna work in the technology area, they ask, what do you have, your organization have technology wise and all? And sometimes they go, and other times they go, oh, that's exciting. So Lacey's gonna be, culturally competent and have this developed workforce and be real progressive. As you're acquiring talent, you have to be current, or the talent is gonna be unimpressed.
Yeah.
It won't come to you.
That is something that we heard in the section on, what we heard for this specific focus area. It was recruitment strategies that reach broader candidate pools and, absolutely technology being woven in there. So I appreciate that. Any other comments on this one before we go ahead and go to the next question, which is around this impact statement?
I was trying to flip forward to some of the strategies you were already identifying, but an area, when we talk about workforce diversity and aiming for a workforce that better reflects the diversity of the community, I have found that often overlooked, and it might be buried in some words here, how does the city or any entity prepare its existing workforce to be accepting of a new element of people? Because quite often, diverse employees come along and they're one or two, a few, and they walk into hostile, toxic environments. And if the city or county or department or company or whomever has not actively changed that, we have the word work environment. I know that's kind of what it's alluding to, but there's a tremendous amount of work and commitment involved with getting that existing workforce ready for this, there are many, I'm assuming, I don't know, because I haven't seen the baseline data. Many departments in the city that's never had a person of color in it. How's that person of color going to be received when they walk into that all-white setting? So is that what's meant by work environment? Workforce environment? Because that's the other part. I mean, you work hard to recruit, reach out, find competent people, and then retention is bad because nobody worked on the environment that you brought them into. And, and I'm just throwing that kind of out, so wherever it fits into the strategies as we move forward, all the recruitment and all the good candidates in the world aren't gonna last if they've just been plopped down in a toxic, resenting environment. I'll just say that and leave it at that, and just expect that some of those strategies, talk about how does a current workforce prepare itself for a changing set of workers in any setting, whatever it is. And
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
when things usually fall down with all of this HR stuff and outreach and recruitment. Well, we hired 3 last year and only have 1 left. Well, what did you do to? I see the language make, welcome to all. Those are simple words, but a huge task for any entity to be ready to embrace, as they're talking about embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And, indicators being one thing that could be looked at, as you mentioned, is retention. So retention would tell you a lot about how someone is, well, not everything, but it would tell you a lot about how that's going. So perhaps that's a good strategy to add is, not just looking at recruitment, but also looking at retention over time. What does that look like?
Right.
So Chair Jackson and Commissioner Brown, Vice Chair Brown, excuse me. What I've heard is under the workforce environment and kind of the umbrella of that, of it being before an employee even gets there, right? So being transparent, open, and upfront about, what the job entails, what the technology is available that, any person who'd be coming on to the organization what the organization holistically is like before a person comes on, when a person comes on, and then supporting, to Commissioner Hart's point about, providing training opportunities and experience, and to Vice Chair Brown, your point about technology training, providing training consistently throughout the duration of an employee's career with the city.
Yes, I agree.
And,
And are we on question 2 yet?
I think this is our first go with doing this. Yeah,
Oh,
all of
so
the
we-
3 areas
oh.
are overflowing to some
Oh.
degree, but that's kind of the joy and beauty of doing something like this is we haven't done it yet here before with the commission, and we're excited to be here and have these conversations. So certainly we are still on slide 1, and I know I
Oh, okay.
want to provide the opportunity for everybody to take their sticky note and actually put it up there too on the board so that we have that record of the sticky note for our first exercise, very much like we have, online remote here too. If you are finished with section 1, or if you have other comments too, please, by all means.
So you want to, yep, you can stick
just
it out
stick
if
them
you'd like.
up,
Yep.
on up there.
And so it is the top left board, and Raphael, if you just want to point to that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's this one right here,
All right.
right there.
See, that technology.
I like this. It's not my first rodeo. To allude to what Chair Jackson was saying, essentially what she was talking about was what we like to call change management, right? And so that in itself could potentially be a strategic plan in terms of what you were alluding to, is change management within diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so once someone comes on board, then what are we doing now to make that work environment more equitable and inclusive as a whole? Make them more welcoming and forthcoming. So that's in itself could be part of the plan also.
On the question of, is the statement complete? I'm just having challenges with this very direct statement
Oh.
saying, the impact statement.
Mhm.
The
Well-
city of Lacey is culturally competent, questionable, organization that implements equitable practices. Now, my comment was, is it something that's ongoing? That we're, and I would say something to the fact that that the city of Lacey is developing cultural competence in implementing equitable practices or something along that line. I don't think anybody is there.
Nope.
No organization.
I agree.
So kind of, we're growing, we're learning, we're growing, we're implementing as we learn. We just want to do it at a fast pace, a good clip, not be slow with it.
Yeah.
That was my challenge with the state.
Yeah, and with that, let's actually all go to the next, because that was exactly the comment was on this impact statement. So let's all actually click forward one slide, so we're on slide 3 now. And the question is, does this draft impact statement seem complete? Any additions, edits, questions, or concerns? And 100% that's something that's echoed is about, becoming competent, checking the box. Well, you've learned, you're done. And that's not
not the way it
what
works.
it is, right? And so that's great feedback. And so we'll give a moment for folks joining virtually to also provide some feedback, and others who are here in person, if you'd like, feel free to comment on this question on this draft impact statement.
I agree with Cliff from the point of view of the verb is, threw me there. Versus strives to be, or
Continuing to practice.
the city of Lacey strives to become, or strives to be a culturally competent organization that implements equitable practices. And my sticky says, and ultimately results in a workforce reflective of the diverse community. Ultimately, it might be 25, 50 years out, but strive to become that.
Mhm.
But the word is, I was thinking in terms of the vision that states, as though it is now. So was this a vision statement where we say is versus strives to become, or strives to be?
Yeah.
We're working on it, we're developing. We're growing, we're learning.
I think these are all excellent comments and from the starting point, these are all drafts, so these are great feedback and we will be incorporating all this feedback was starting with, intended changes, right? So ultimately, but what I'm hearing is much more active where we're at now and then looking to the future.
Yeah, so this statement looks, like the words sound nice, but like I just, my mind always goes to strategy. And so like for the city, I know that they have diversity trainings where it's like you can watch a video, but it's so easy to just like tune out. It's tricky. I don't know how you get there. I don't know how you change people's minds, because you can provide trainings, but even where I work, I know a lot of people are like, oh, diversity training, whatever, click. Like they turn it on and they tune it out. So I have no idea how the city would, I don't know how any organization does it, I don't know.
It's tough.
Can I speak to that a little bit?
Yeah.
So something that shows up in my work often is that exact question, and it does not have one answer. It's really hard to put a finger on. People actually have to discuss what all of that means to them in their role at their organization at this time in the world, in whatever city it exists in, and it will change over time. And so there's not one easy right answer for any of that, and it requires a conversation. Like, how can we not check a box and make this learning real for folks? And that is tough to get at, and it has to be a conversation.
Yeah, and I think that requires a lot of, or someone like yourself who would be really skilled at facilitating a conversation like that. So that it's actually productive. And then also there's a large group of people who just won't talk, so I don't know.
If I may add to that real quick, so in my experience, so I know I'll introduce myself to everyone later on, but essentially Raphael Fernandez, and I'm actually just coming out of the US Army. And I actually have some experience in that aspect that you're talking about, because a lot of folks had those kind of questions as well in my previous organizations. And one of the things that I define to them is, it starts with top down, bottom up definement. And so if you want to start having those conversations, it has to start from the top. And so it's not about, well, let me just present a video, right? Or let me just do this type of online interactive training. It starts with real conversations with real people. And it's actually leadership led at that point, facilitated by whether it be like a DEI consultant, manager, whatever the case may be. And they're the ones that push that agenda. Now, in order for that to even occur in the first place, that leader has to buy into it. Now, if he doesn't buy into it, then he cannot expect the culture of the workplace to buy into it. And he or she cannot expect that culture to be there. And so it's really starting from the top on down. And once that is seen as a whole by the organization, then that's when the organization really starts buying into it from that standpoint, saying, okay, I'm seeing my leaders, making this a topic of conversation. They are actively engaging into it. Therefore, I am going to actively engage into it. At least that's some of the approaches that I took in my previous organizations.
Commissioner Stolberg, and I think what you just highlighted is exactly what, we need to focus on as strategies, like what is the how? How do we move that forward? And so certainly be thinking about that as we continue this conversation.
Yeah, is that something that, I don't know or where it would fit, but like, saying something about leadership, because you're absolutely right. Nothing's going to happen if leadership doesn't buy in.
Right. We call it leadership courage. Having worked in human resources side of things, as the culture changed in an organization, we were, in the middle of it. We were the ones that had to deal with situations when it was not embraced, when there were issues and challenges, but it came down to leadership buying into it and having the courage to have those difficult conversations with employees and with fellow leaders.
Yes.
To really make it a part of the organization. training employees, okay, I went through it, I checked the box. But when those employees that get a new team member who may be gay or lesbian, or may be of European descent with an accent, or maybe from Nigeria, how will they, how would they react to having that person as part of their team? That's when the learning started, when that person joins that team. And I tell you, if there's no leadership courage in that team that's leading them, it's gonna be difficult. It's not gonna happen, and retention is not gonna be well.
And that's why you start at the top.
You start at the top, you work your way down.
Work your way down.
Yes.
I noticed that in what we heard from community on the same consolidated focus area, leaders are 100% mentioned there. City recruits diverse employees in all areas, including leaders. So just wanted to call that out, that's very reflective of what we heard via community engagement and visioning so far as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any comments from any folks joining virtually? And Commissioner Clay, I know that you're not able to grab a sticky, so feel free to chime in here anytime. So what I'm also hearing is we might want to, instead of moving on here, I'm going to move, if I can, our strategies forward, if I could do it without messing this up.
And while Tyvin's doing that, if you do have a sticky on the last one, if you could please put it up on the whiteboard, very much like our online commissioners, so we can have that record there too.
Which one was it?
The second bottom left, nope, down, there you go, perfect.
Right there.
I put on mine,
In your steps.
instead of saying it, continues to practice becoming. Instead of the word is, that way it does kind of sound more like a living document.
Yeah, thank you for that. And what we heard so far is something we could take out, and also culturally competent, maybe as a concept we might want to change, is something we also heard. So maybe we can, I'll take that and maybe present to another draft, and we can take a look and see how that feels.
Another word or phrase.
Oh, yeah,
that could be
absolutely.
used there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, any final comments or thoughts on this one before we move forward? And I switched the slides a little bit, so we're actually going to talk strategies, because I think we have some good momentum on this focus area. All right, so if you click to 4, and if you're in person, I'm not sure which page this will be on, but what you'll see is the focus area, the consolidated focus area, and the strategy. So these are in the same.
Page 7, the green box.
Page 7, yep, green color code, so it'll be green. And we're gonna actually do this for each of these, right? So what we did is, first is the grouping right, then do we have the impact statement right? And we have already heard some updates there we're gonna wanna see. And then now let's talk about strategies. So is this list of strategies complete? And this is where we can really dive into, how are we going to get this impact? What are we going to see? And also to consider, what are the indicators for some of these strategies? So I'll give folks a moment to read through that. And if you're joining virtually, feel free to grab a sticky.
While we're doing this, then I have a question about the city of Lacey's staff in the departments. So everything here is led by HR. Do they have like a learning development department or anything like that? Or does HR handle the development piece as well?
So for the most part, Vice Chair Brown, HR is, going to be facilitating all of the mandatory trainings. And then within each department, individuals are going to request other types of trainings, and that'll be up to, supervisors or whether or not, but HR is leading all of, the required trainings for the city.
Okay.
I think just to clarify and build off of that, it does say lead department, and that's not to mean that other departments aren't involved, but that's really, who is kind of the key stakeholder group within the city to help, facilitate, some of these strategies moving forward. But what I've also heard, from this conversation is making sure that leadership is part of, the dialogue when we're talking about leading the city and leading
Right.
departments.
So does the city do most of its development through e-learning?
Well, I have been here through COVID, so let me just put the caveat with that most of the training has been done by learning online.
Right.
However, there are training programs outside of that, and I'm sure as we come into a kind of post-COVID world, that more, in-person, non-online training will become available to staff.
I have to apologize, coming from private sector, big company, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Well, so, okay,
Great questions, keep them coming.
yes, it's, I'm just so accustomed, so I would envision the HR department, if they're in charge of, the lead department on this, that they would work with consultants or whomever would say, for your D&I training, here are the sources. Here are the trainings that are available. And I recommend for a city of your size, this and that, the A, G, and Q training. And then HR would purchase that training and then sell it to, where the departments would, have their employees go through that training. Some online, when I say e-learning, you go through modules and you sign it. And others may be, you go through the module, then we have some in-person to, put a stamp on it, so allow your questions and feedback and all this type of stuff and measure the environment. That's why I was wondering if within the HR department, is there a development person, an expert within the department that really drives that piece, was my question.
I have a clarifying question, I guess. This might be a clarifying question, but so for these strategies, and maybe what I'm hearing is something we heard earlier was retention, right? And so what I'm imagining is that this commission will make recommendations in addition to what HR may be up to already. So I'm fairly certain most HR have some kind of process for understanding recruitment and retention and hiring and everything. So as we've seen presentations, it's not, hey, we want you to start doing this, but hey, can you talk to us about how you're doing it? And maybe we can kind of provide some ideas as far as what else you could be doing. And so I know that a lot of these departments are not starting from scratch, and they have some, they have been doing some work. So maybe it's more along the lines of, hey, here's some draft strategies. What else do we want to make sure is included here? Focus on retention, focus on reporting, maybe sharing reporting. Maybe it's that HR might not, make that accessible and, you can just click online and find out what they're up to. So maybe that could be a suggestion, is like, maybe we want to add some ease of access to some of that information as far as a recommendation is concerned in this strategic plan. So I would imagine it's closer to making a recommendation. So here's a strategy that we're going to recommend, and this is in addition to what you're already up to. So that's a conversation. What are you up to already?
Well, Tevin, to credit the departments, those that have come before us and made the present, they've been very consistent with what they're reporting to us. And so our questions, are getting answered, or we're asking them as we go through. And then, so we have recommendations and all, for them, but they've been very consistent, Parks and Recs and the police department and all them, they've come through and their presentations are pretty standard. I don't know if they intentionally standardized, but they cover many of the same areas.
Absolutely. So the question is anything missing that we're wanting to see? And specifically, a question here on reporting, maybe annually, does something like this kind of strategy fit for this impact statement, or maybe it fits across focus areas? So I want to leave that there for folks. And Shannon, if you want to speak more to this question, feel free.
Well, yeah, so in the next couple of slides, we're gonna see the measurement and accountability. And so the question is, do you capture it within each of those areas, or do you have a just kind of broadly defined category that captures all of the different focus areas? And I don't know if the question needs to be answered, this evening, because we are certainly gonna wanna look at baselines and then what benchmarks are, but I do think it is something that the commission should be, considering of kind of the organization and what structure might make the most sense for the diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan moving forward.
Wonder if I could say something?
Yes, please.
I can't find the hand to raise, so I'm just jumping in. But yeah, that makes me think that we're making these recommendations and the reporting is important to me. And so if there was a report in each category, and well, I guess bottom line, we kind of have to identify who's going to be making these reports and also where the reports go. I don't think we have a diversity and equity office. We're just the commission to recommend these things. So yeah, I wonder if we should have a certain kind of reporting that we're asking from each of our areas.
Commissioner Clay, I think you bring up, a really good point, and something that we do want to return to, in future iterations of this conversation. And, that's why we're starting with the draft strategies to provide us with the general, what are we looking to do? So then we can go and do our research and diligence and come back and say, this is, what we heard as a draft strategy. Now, here's what we think, benchmarks, what metrics might exist, so that we can see if we are actually moving the needle on that strategy moving forward. And in addition to that, to, Chair Jackson's point of where are we starting and did we move forward? So it's giving us the parameters right now of saying, hey, these are what we think are going to move forward as strategies. Come back at a later session and provide some more information on what benchmarks actually look like moving forward. So that could be what report mechanisms would be part of that annual report.
I think that the city's growth or moving the needle is going to be a result of the departments moving the needle. And I can just envision us having one question for each of the department heads, something along the lines, what would you like for your department to look like and or accomplish, say, over the next year? And this will be in reference to, the development, that statement there on equity and inclusion. And that department says, okay, I want to increase, my diversity, and I want to increase this or do that, or whatever it is. The department says, this is what I want to do. And if that is acceptable, then now the measurements will tell us if they are getting there, if they're moving that direction, then they will be actively pursuing things that's going to help them get there. Working with HR, they're the lead department. But I say put the onus on that department head to say, this is what I want my department to look like.
What I'm hearing in that strategy is maybe having departments, which, maybe some of them already have some goals, some DEI focused goals, but making sure that every department has those and is reporting on what theirs are. Is that something that we can list as a strategy? Like every department,
I think that's the strategy.
Sets their own goals and reports on their own goals.
Yes, and I guess I struggle with, does the city manager oversee this? It's not, we don't have the mayor that doesn't. I'm looking at a CEO who, the department or division chief who has the departments, and he or she, works with the department heads on those things. For the city, is it
So let's start with like the kind of the broadest scope and we'll bring this down. So at the highest level, right, the city council adopts policies for the city of Lacey. And so this document, eventually the diversity, equity and inclusion strategic plan will be going in front of the city council for approval. And so if approved, the council says, these are the policies that we want the city to follow. And then to your point, Vice Chair Brown, you have the CEO, which is the city manager, whose job is then to administer those policies in the day-to-day activities of the organization. So now the city manager is responsible ultimately for the implementation of the policies set by the city council. So the city manager oversees all of the departments,
okay.
including, human resources. And so, a lot of these have identified as human resources as the lead department. I just want to go back to my comment of saying, all of the departments are involved in making sure that any sort of strategy would be implemented across the organization. So it starts with the policy level, and then it goes to the operational level with the city manager, and then Vice Chair Brown, 2 supervisors as you continue to work your way down the organization to implement those policies in the day-to-day practices of the city.
Right, yeah, so we look at the department heads as being more strategic, and then of course your supervisors and managers, being more tactical. Yeah, that's clear to me now. Yeah.
Could we add something to the reporting reporting annually on initiatives? In my head, that means indicators, maybe, deliverables, something, something data that you can actually report. And then maybe a requirement to also provide some sort of plan to address deficiencies within that reporting, rather than just reporting.
I like
So something I hear, so measures of performance and then and measures of effectiveness. So what are we doing? And then are we doing things right? Essentially.
And then developing a plan to address whatever needs.
Address deficiencies, what
Yeah.
aren't we doing right? Where are we falling short? What are the gaps what's the gap analysis that we can do at that point to close that gap?
Yeah.
Yeah,
One
so
of the things kind of in the back of my head, and I kind of go to my years of consulting in education, the education arena, where I would walk into a school building and I see all the fancy signs, all kids can learn, all kids can be successful. Then the first question I want to know is, to what degree aren't your kids learning and not being successful? What is your achievement gap and who's in that gap? Then my next question to them would be, what are you as a district or a building or whatever willing to do differently to make that statement come true? It has instructional implications, budgeting implications, facility use implications, a whole bunch of stuff. What are you willing to do differently if you want that statement at some point in the future to become true? And that's where the tough conversation comes into it. To what degree aren't all your students being successful and learning? And who is it not being successful in learning? And you know what that data looks like. Kids of color, low-income kids, kids from, they've never looked at that before. You just be spurting out those rhetorical kinds of things. So to bring it to the city of Lacey or any other municipality, not just Lacey, we're having these words about here wanting to be diverse, inclusive, equitable, and get back to my first point about where are we now? And what's going to have to be done differently to make the city diverse, inclusive, equitable. And that's where the strategies began to just flow from there. Is the city willing to mandate diversity training versus just offer it and give you the opportunity to voluntarily come? Is there a certain menu that you shall attend A, B, and C, And from D through K, you can pick two others of your something. But what is the city willing to do differently in order to achieve, you know, these statements, these visionary and mission statements we're talking about? And that's why the internal tough. But we can't do that because we have a union contract that says die. You know, and that's what I would always hear in the education arena. Well, our teachers have academic freedom, so that die, you know, and it's like, so the answer to what are you willing to do differently to get there where you say you want to be? And that's where, you know, the moonwalk starts on you, start backing up. And I just use that as an example of where the strategies just naturally flow. And in the case of educational system, you gotta look at that curriculum. Is it inclusive? If you're talking about inclusive in a diverse student population, do you have any ethics studies? What does your workforce look like? Who's in front of those children every day, you know? And boom, there you are. So you're back to hiring and retention, and like Christina was talking about, what are you listing in these job postings and job announcements? You know, and I was a school board member for 20 years. And to have recommendations about where we're choosing candidate A over candidate B. They have all the criteria, but in our interview, we realized this one can also coach volleyball. We didn't apply, we didn't advertise for a volleyball coach. We're looking for social studies teacher. You know, and those things that were so built into the system, so many people of color and other kinds of employees never would get those jobs. I don't care what kind of education they have, what kind of certificate, what kind of diploma. And the person, you know, they can coach volleyball, so they got the job. So those are culturally biased, implicit bias kinds of things that are so built into the system that over time is excluded more than included. And so I'm just thinking in terms of the city that's at a pretty good point from my vantage point as a citizen around here for 50 years. That baseline isn't going to show that Lacey is starting from zero, you know, along that continuum. Maybe it's just some tightening up in some places. Maybe it's just some refining, but in some other areas, they might be close to zero and got to put more attention there and take away some of those choices that some employees have had if it's going to be an obstacle to, you know, that's just kind of where I'm coming at it from. So I'll just stop at that and get off my soapbox. But these are lofty goals and ambitious goals and good strategies.
Yeah, I heard in there, review of job postings and job announcements, and that's a very specific strategy. Can I add that to the list of something that we could recommend?
Yeah.
So-
Dana brought it up first, you know, yeah.
And I heard that as well, and I want to turn everybody's attention to strategy B, which is on recruitment efforts. And so is there something, you know, that is not capturing with strategy B that we could augment? And I think that, you know, we had a presentation from Human Resources, and I want to say it was probably last August at this point, so August of 2021, you know, and they talked about some of the efforts that they were doing, including, you know, looking at qualifications as part of their recruitment strategy. And, you know, looking to strategy B, that was something that was intended to be reflected in there, but certainly if we're not capturing that, that is excellent information to know and to hear how we could better augment that to reflect what the Commission on Equity is looking for.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that, again, it's just broad, but I don't know. I mean, because it takes a lot of being intentional and thinking and a lot of little tasks to reach that. So that's just broad, but you know, like you're saying, looking at job postings is one thing, but there's a lot of things that we might think are important in order to do that, but we don't know whoever reads this, what are they gonna think is included in it?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, the drilling down on this would be important. You know, the HR, you know, they do some good things. they follow processes and they have applications and things that they use, okay, that they've adopted. We use these things in recruitment. But the good news is they're open to ideas, recommendations on how that can be enhanced, or we could do some things to increase diversity, identify different audiences that we're recruiting. And so within this, somehow we could get some statement that says, yes, we have our processes, but we're willing to, consider other processes that could help us to do a better job in improving diversity or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because like when I read this, I've sat on a lot of interview panels. To me, I would just automatically, like what I would like to see, something that I would think would be included is, when you have an interview panel, sometimes you have 3 or 4, whatever, employees who are sitting on an interview panel. It would be great for them to have some implicit bias training prior to doing those interviews. But I don't know that everybody who's reading that would think of something like that being included in it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't list everything, so it's probably fine.
Well, Commissioner Stolberg, I think partially what I'm hearing you saying goes back to those benchmarks, right? So what are the mechanisms that are reported out, on how those efforts are moving forward? It is a very broad statement, right? Attract and enhance recruitment efforts to attract, hire, and retain a workforce. Is kind of breaking that down into, some more defined strategies, and then also having those benchmarks to show, hey, yes, this is something that is showing to move the needle, or maybe that gap's not being covered and needs to be reconsidered. As part of the diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan, we've been having each of the departments come and provide a presentation on, what the department does and, what, some of the efforts are, HR, for example, talking about the recruitment process specifically. And so our intention would be to include within the diversity, equity, inclusion plan, more information based off of, what is currently going on. So people could take a look into Appendix A and say, hey, this is currently what's going on, which might be, looking at minimum qualifications, or maybe they just reviewed minimum qualifications, but having some sort of supplemental information on there where people could dive deeper into that subject.
Yeah, and getting out of your comfort zone and going into other arenas that you're not comfortable in, the areas you haven't explored, before. And would help with your diversity. But, there's at least one department here that, in listening to their process that they use, I go, okay, you're thinking local, you're not thinking global. And to go a little bit more global would improve their diversity. But what's your trade-off? Oh, we don't have local people working here. We have someone from Mississippi, my home state, that was transferred here. Is that a positive or is that a negative? Culturally, there are things to learn from that person who comes from Mississippi. And that person from Mississippi would learn about this area. So you're moving skills and experiences around more than just having people in the South Sound come to work for the city. Are we gonna grow by just having people from the South Sound come work in the city? So
Commissioner Clay has a question.
Oh, she found her hand.
I found my hand, yeah. I think we could be more specific about with the word training, that we're talking about leadership doing, leading, but we could say something more specific about the leadership having cultural competence training, implicit bias training. There's actually nothing that talks about the education training in our 3-4 strategies.
Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback.
I have a procedural question. we're building this document, we start up here, the pyramid is growing. Is the next step here to take these individual strategies with some specific action steps? As I work with people facilitating strategic planning, the action steps would then come under A, B, C, D. Is that part of the process you're working us towards, or do we stop short of the strategy level?
I think we would stop short of that level, and I'm curious to also hear Shannon's opinion on this, but as far as the recommendation is concerned, we have like all the information, we've done the learning, we've listened to the community, we've formed a recommendation, and the work of implementing and the how has to do with a lot of mechanisms that we really don't have access to or know about. And so I would imagine we stop short of the actual, we're gonna have people, come in on this day to talk about this topic or whatever it may be, however that looks. So I would think we'd stop short of the action that comes right immediately after the strategies.
Yeah, Tevin, just to add on to that, again, we're crafting a draft strategic plan to go in front of the policymakers for adoption. And the strategic plan, the object is not for a 1 year or a 2 year period, that we're talking, long-term, 5-10 years, kind of thinking what strategies the city should be engaged in to help continue to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion here within the organization, and then also within the community. And then there will be, more refined, work plans for subsequent years that would say, for example, given that HR is the lead department, and I'll just use example A, continue internal DEI efforts, including adoption and implementation of a workforce equity plan that enhances cultural competency at all levels within the organization. This could be something where HR says, year 1, 2, we plan on really focusing on the design of that workforce equity plan, and our achievement at the end of the year, the benchmark would be the adoption of that. And then the following year, specific implementations, whether that's a scope of training, going back to Vice Chair Brown's point, like an education package that is required, et cetera, right? So having more concrete defined steps within the strategies of the strategic plan. And that would certainly, be something that in the future, would be coming in front of the Commission on Equity for, consideration and some comments and some recommendations.
So the idea here is that all of this funnels into the city's work on its overall strategic plan. I mean, at some point, there is a strategic plan before the council for adoption and approval, right?
So the city currently has vision theme areas, and they have the budget and a work plan, and that gets tied back to the vision theme areas. So you could use that kind of as a strategic plan equivalent. But to your point, and I think you said this much earlier in the process of that infusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of being infused in what the city does.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a strategic plan for diversity, equity, inclusion, but it's going to be infused into the future, day-to-day operations, and it'll be operationalized, right, into actual kind of concrete steps. And the point is to have, kind of established benchmarks so we can evaluate, is what is being done as a concrete step, is that effective? Or do we need to consider other things? Do we need to go to the Commission on Equity and say, do you have any other ideas, thoughts for us, moving forward in kind of the operationalization of our day-to-day work plan?
I was just trying to do the looping in my mind, but does this all fit to the city moving forward with, with the city's strategic plan, so to speak? Just trying to anticipate next steps here for us as an equity commission. Yeah.
Absolutely. Any other comments on, is this list of strategies complete? And I've notated, and actually I wanted to, if we can quickly come back to Commissioner Hart. Is this a place where you might want to insert some of those ideas you were sharing earlier around mentorship and lived experience?
Yeah, that would probably be where it would best fit.
If you're able to make it sticky, that would be great, just so we capture that. And also I can just jot it down as a note, but a sticky would be wonderful.
I don't know. I can do that.
Thanks so much.
So commissioners, I want to recognize that we are a little over an hour and a half, I believe, at this point into this evening. And just to get some direction from the commission on what you think for steps moving forward. Obviously, we have a couple more items that were included in the packet, and they focus on community access and engagement, and then measurement and accessibility. Not accessibility, accountability, excuse me. And we're not going to be able to get to all of those items this evening unless you all want to be here until about 2 a.m, which I don't think we all do. So we can return, at the next meeting to those areas, or we can come back with a refined workforce and work environment, and also kind of contemplate potential benchmarks that associate with them and continue the conversation on this consolidated area. And so I just want to check in with the commission and see if there is a preference.
What I would prefer is that we come back to this. I think a lot has been shared and voiced and expressed that could possibly change the structure of some of this. But the conversation allows us to follow this better now that we've worked and started small and grew. But to stop where we are on this and pick up on it at the next thing with whatever incorporated comments and stickies and whatever Tevin has heard that might, word here or there. But I think so far you get a flavor of people's heads, and other than beat the rest of this horse the rest of the night. Is it not from my vantage point, that's where I'm sitting, but what about my fellow commissioners here and those remotely?
Well, I agree. If we come back with a more focused, updated, great, then we can move into the access and other things. Because I know there's some people that are really, in tune with that, and we want to really have a robust discussion, on that piece. So yeah, it's something that we can just keep moving along the line.
Is that okay, Devin?
That's totally fine with me. And what we can do is we reorganized just in this meeting. So we've done table A. We're starting with the green. And we've gone through green, so maybe what we'll do is we'll reorganize to do that exact same thing with the other focus areas. So let's just stick with this focus area, and I can collect up stickies, and I'm gonna take photos of what we have so far. Because I'll need to run, but let me collect up any stickies you have for this last exercise. I'll stick them up and I'll take a photo.
So commissioners, at the next workshop in July, which will be July 25th, we will pick up where we stopped with the workforce and work environment, just to see what we have heard and make sure it was captured in an update. And we'll talk about some potential benchmarks associated with that category. And if we have time, we'll move on to the next consolidated focus area, which would be community access and engagement.
Great.
Okay.
Is that amenable to everyone? Is that approach?
I like it.
How about those online? Sounds like a plan?
Yep, sounds
Yep.
like a great plan. Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
Super, thank you.
I'd be willing to do a work session, maybe in the fall if we've got a lot of these areas to work through. Just saying, I'd be willing to do an extra work session on it.
So it sounds like Commissioner Clay, it sounds like you'd be interested in potentially having a longer, maybe day or weekend session to continue to dive into some of these topics to move this on a little bit further.
Or just an extra meeting to just focus on it without any other business. Just an
Great,
idea.
thank you, Commissioner Clay.
Thank you.
Would the other commissioners be interested in having a second meeting per month just to continue these conversations?
I would be interested in seeing where we are the next time. We see some of these things folded in, incorporated in. Did we get the hang of it? Is the flow moving and getting us where we want to be? And if we're still kind of out there, I'm more than willing to give whatever extra time is needed to tighten it up. But I think Kevin heard a lot that I see his head and his, the next iteration of it might satisfy things without needing an extra meeting or a daily work section. But what Annie is saying, this is very important stuff, and we want to make sure we've given it the attention it needs, so that as we are recommending to the council, we've given it our best shot and haven't rushed through it and just rubber stamped or whatever. So let's revisit that point, Annie, at the next meeting after we see the reiteration of this. Would that be okay? Great.
And is it possible too, because there is a link that goes to all the 11 different slides, can we go through and just kind of do our own stickies and be kind of ready to kind of talk about it?
100%, absolutely. We have printouts in front of us as well. So, this could be some, I'm not gonna call it homework, but if you have some of the, if you have the time to do that on your own, I would definitely say feel free to go in and do that. So I'll also note, we are going to get even, I don't want to say quicker, but we're going to understand the process much better as we move along. So this was the first one, but I think after this, we're going to see like, oh, okay, this is how the strategies are formed. Okay, here's where I want to add, and we'll be able to move through a little bit quicker. So timing, I don't think is bad at all. And as we grow in this process, we're going to see that it becomes easier.
Okay, cool.
And so for commissioners who are here in person, the link has been sent out to all of your emails. So you do have access to this board as well and can start filling out sticky notes on the JM board, in addition to the documents, the paper documents you have with you too.
Yeah, this is very fun for me. But thank you, Tevin.
Absolutely.
Glad to have you back with us. And if you have any other comments for us before we move on to the next item?
Nope, I just
We
look
have our
forward
work,
to being
our
back.
homework laid out for us, and
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm actually gonna run. But yeah, great to be back with you all and looking forward to our next meeting.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thank you.
Thank you. That moves us then to item B.
Well,
Thank you, Raphael, for indulging us. So Shannon will introduce you and we'll move right on into that.
well, commissioners, I will actually let Raphael Fernandez introduce himself to the commission and take it away with item number B, which is the community connectivity analysis update and conversation on future community dialogues.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. Good evening. So as Shannon alluded to, I'm Raphael Fernandez. I am just recently hired on as a management analyst for the city manager. I'm coming up now on a month into my new position here, and every day is definitely different than the previous day. So that's for sure. I'm still doing my training by fire hose, but it is much welcomed. One of the aspects that I've been asked to work on for you all was the community connectivity analysis. And so it was something I felt very comfortable doing with in regards to putting together everything that's required so it paints the picture better for the Commission on Equity in terms of our community as a whole. Keeping in mind the community connectivity analysis, first step really towards building this type of analysis is, understanding the resiliency that we have within our communities. And so putting this analysis together as a whole allows us attachment of place, as well as also connectiveness, social capital, social support, and then really a sense of belonging and trust, as well as also a sense of possibility and collective efficacy as well. The community connectivity analysis really allows us to answer three main questions. And Those questions are essentially, one, who exactly is in our community as a whole? As well as also how are people connected to the community? And who's not connected in the community as well? And then lastly, what are the best ways that we could reach and engage everyone within our community? And so 3 steps within the community connectivity analysis are essentially, one, identifying those affinity groups. Affinity groups essentially are groups that have a shared interest, characteristics, or experiences amongst each other. And then moving forward, identifying those networks as well as those gaps that may be within those networks. And then finally, identify trusted connectors and gather contact information for those affinity groups themselves. Those 3 steps allow us ultimately to get to the point about, once we have that analysis, then we can ask about outreach opportunities and preferences, as well as also ask about engagement opportunities and preferences. And then lastly, we can map those connections. And so this analysis was brought to you all a few months ago as initial work, and I assumed that work, and I wanted to give you guys a quick visual in terms of where I stand so far with the analysis and how much I was able to expand on it. So I'll go ahead and share my screen for everyone. Walk me. I'm not quite.
So move to the left. Yep, select that one. And then I believe it's just a tab. So hit share. And then there you go.
There we go.
You just want to hit the X. Perfect.
All right, so I hope everyone can see virtually the screen that I'm sharing at this moment. And so my breakdown is as follows. I'm going to show you 2 viewpoints. Really, the viewpoint you're looking at right now is my work viewpoint. And so this is how I essentially gather the information and I plug in the necessary data. And so I understand that this commission's main priority upfront was education as to start with. And so I want to show you firsthand what that looks like from an educational piece. And I actually, let's see, I'm going to just scroll down just a bit. I'll leave it up here for right now. I'm going to show you another view in just a moment, but just bear with me on this one. So from the educational side of the house, I've been able to gather data in terms of the universities that are locally here in the area, as well as also North Thurston Public Schools District and the high schools that are within those districts. And not only just the public schools as well, but also taking in the other 2 private schools in Northwest, as well as Pope John Paul II. And so the first one that you're seeing here is the Diversity and Equity Center. That's at St. Martin's University. And what I've been able to do is essentially put together a directory of sorts for each one of these institutions. So starting off, there's their webpage here, their address, contact numbers just in general as a broad overview for the university and for the Diversity and Equity Center. There are other contact methods. So if you wanted to email them or if you wanted to reach them out on any of their various social media platforms, I've put those links on here as well. Their connector is obviously the university as a whole. And then I've been able to gather more of a point of contact for that center. So for instance, this point of contact would be Dr. John Hopkins over at that center. And that is a phone number, a direct number that you can reach him, as well as also he has an associated email as you see pops up. Ways that that center communicates as a whole through various communication channels are ways such as they communicate in person, over the phone, email, through newsletters, social media, websites. They put out bulletin boards, they hand out flyers, they do meetings, and they do events as well in the community. And so in essence, if we ever wanted to reach out as a commission in terms of, hey, I want to reach out to St. Martin's University, or I want to reach out to the North Thurston Public School District, as I can show you as well. And we've explored their various channels. If we wanted to have a collaborative meeting as a whole, we can bring them all together, we can reach out to them, or we can engage them in other ways as well through their various different community channels. I'm going to go ahead now and show you a more broad overview of how this looks like, so you can have a better understanding as a whole, and then I'll show you some other areas as well. So there are, besides the educational piece, which again, I'll highlight, this is the place at St. Martin's. There's also for SPSCC. I've been able to get their entire card as well in terms of their website and all their corresponding information to include a point of contact. Moving on down, here's ESD 113. So the Educational Service District that services not just Thurston County, but also Grays County, as well as, let's see on here, Grays, Harbor County School Districts, Thurston County School Districts, Mason County. There's a few others that are close to the Pacific, Lewis and Pacific, yes.
45 and all.
Exactly, and not only the public schools, but as well as the private schools as well. So I've been able to capture all their information. And then on down here, this is where I have North Thurston Public School District. And so I have all their information to include who is the director of their Equity and Language Center at the district level itself. At the schools, the information is incomplete as of moment because they are out of the school year. And so every high school sets up what's called an equity team. And those won't be set in place until at least the end of September. And so that information, that data will not be filled until then at the earliest.
Is that a new thing?
That is a new thing, actually, that I've contacted the director there, Antonio Sandifer, and he said that that is something that the schools have been doing very recently. And then, so I have each one of the schools here, and there are statuses put with them. So it's yellow, obviously, is still in the working state. Green means that it's completed, it's good to go, and red will mean that it has not started as of yet. And so I got the high schools in a yellow state still. However, the district as a whole, I still have it in a green state because I do have the district point of contact there. And so again, this commission's priority being the educational side, this is at least how we can start from that point if you wanted to get after the educational piece. Now, besides the education, I also wanted to show you that I've expanded on the analysis to include Washington State government. And so I have quite a bit in terms of the the Washington State Office of Equity I have put on here. Washington State Office of Minority and Women's Business, so WAMBI as it's known. I've also included the DEI Council. This is currently amber because I'm waiting to get back some more feedback and information. And then there's a few commissions on here. Washington State Commission of African American Affairs, as well as also the Commission on Hispanic Affairs, the Commission of Asian Pacific American Affairs. As you can see, these are all green. The State Governor's Office of Indian Affairs. And then the state does have 6 business resource groups officially. There will be a 7th added at some point. But actually, those are all in amber status right now because each one of those business resource groups are currently going through an election process for their new leadership in place. And so I do have all their information. I just do not have their actual point of contacts as of yet. But once their election processes are complete, I have already spoken to the business resource group coordinator at the Office of Financial Management, and they will provide me that information when it's made available. And then, so these are some of the business resource groups. So we're talking such as Blacks United in Leadership and Diversity, or BUILD. We're also talking the VERG for Veterans Employee Resource Group. The LGBTQ plus community is represented by the Rainbow Alliance and Inclusion Network. The Latino community is represented by the Latino Leadership Network. There's also the Disability Inclusion Network, and then the Washington Immigrant Network. From the African American community, there were currently 5 that I have in, and they are actually all green. I'm sorry, there are 4, and they're all green already. So that includes obviously the Fred U. Harris Lodge, the Black Student Union, out at River Ridge High School, the Women of Color in Leadership Movement, and also the Washington State Commission on African American Affairs again. The BIPOC community, I will start working more heavily on this. There's currently one that I've identified in our area that really contributes to the BIPOC community, and they are partnered with the Thurston County Chamber of Commerce, and that is the South Sound BIPOC. And then moving closer here. So the Asian Pacific Islander community, they're currently, I have 4 outer groups, but then one of those groups is the Korean community, and I've already have 7 identified areas within that community in itself. And so starting off with the Asia Pacific Cultural Center, and that, so they are green, I have all their information. A lot of the Asian Pacific Islander community information I've been able to gather, unfortunately, is actually outside of the greater Lacey area. However, they, in contact with many of them, they do service a lot of the community within the greater Lacey Olympia area. Moving on, there's also the Asian Adult Adoptees of Washington. Then there's the Asian Bar Association of Washington as well. And then within the Korean community, there are, as I stated earlier, 7 areas of focus, starting with the Korean Women's Association, KWA, the Korean American Chamber of Commerce, the Korean American Grocers Association of Washington, the Korean American Bar Association, Korean American Coalition, the Korean American Health Professional Association, and lastly, there is a chapter here in Seattle for the national group known as the Korean American Scientists and Engineers Association. They have a Seattle chapter here. So far, this is how much I've been able to get after your all's priorities when it comes to the analysis. And moving forward, my next viewpoints or my focus points are going to be the Latino, Latinx community, the LGBTQ communities, the veterans community, the immigrant community, and tribes as well. This is going to be my next focal points that I'll be looking to tackle and put as part of the analysis. So I just wanted to give you, again, for the commission, a quick overview of where that community connectivity analysis stands so far. I know it was mentioned a few months back, and so far this is where we stand here, and it's only going to continue to move forward. If there's any priorities that the commission has, I would love to get your input on where you want me to take it next. This is what I have so far right now, and these are the priorities that I have moving forward, unless the commission would like to edit it or add something to those priorities.
So a question.
Yes.
Many of those organizations, we did a thing, stickies and stuff. So I just see some organizations that I think I included that are not there. So if we wanted to add to this, do we just send them directly to you?
You can just send them directly to me. You can let me know by email, give me a phone call, or just write it out to me, and I will absolutely look into those organizations.
And Commissioner, we're continuing to build this out, and we're gonna be continuing to build it out for a period of time, but we are gonna keep coming back to the commission just to provide an overview of where we're at and who might be missing. And so as we move forward on this process, we are gonna spend more time and say, hey, here's this that we put together so far as we built out. As you can see, Raphael's been doing a lot of hard work on putting this together, and it requires a bit of time. And so we don't anticipate that we're gonna be, finished anytime soon, or really finished ever. This is a living, breathing document that'll continue to be updated throughout time. But we do want to come back to the commission once we have built it out a little bit more, let's say, kind of like an 80–85%, and say, what are we missing? What is not here that needs to be here?
And I will just want to add to the commission as well. I know some of you may see what I have here, and as you alluded to, there's something that I gave that I don't see on there right now. believe me, the session that you guys did with the sticky notes and everything, I actually do have that. And I have that broken out in that Excel worksheet that was provided to me. And there is more on there than what I have on here. I just simply have not gotten to it as of yet. But if you feel like, I just want to make sure that you're tracking this one right here, absolutely, please provide it to me and I will ensure that it gets on there.
So if you don't have a contact, you're not able to contact someone, would you like turn to us and say, Commissioner Brown, that this organization, you have a contact?
I
work
absolutely
that
would
way?
be able to do
Okay.
that. Right now, I'm just trying to take that all out of your hands right now. As Shannon alluded to, it's still a
Mhm.
work in progress and it's very much a living, breathing document. And I so far have not encountered any organization where they just straight up have said, I will not provide you that information. The closest has been Northwest Christian High School, where they just provided me an overview email. Just if I have any questions, I can just email them. They did not want to provide a point of contact as of yet. But they were also alluding to that it's the end of the school year as well. And it's possibly because that whoever that person may be may just not be around at that point. And so that's something I will look to get after once the school year begins. Once again, I've made a note of that. But they have provided me an email at least. And so every organization that you've seen up there has provided me some sort of way to communicate with them, or I have been able to find it online myself.
So Commissioner Sauer raised her hand.
Okay, well, what a great list, first of all, so thank you very much. Yeah, I have few that I can edit and send it to you. I see that definitely they need to be added. First of all, like Multicultural Service Center of South Sound, which is I'm part of it. But that needs to be here. And would you be willing to share, share this list with us? Something that we'd be able to utilize as well?
So Commissioner Sauer, we can share the list with you, and we can also again create an online form where you can send information directly through the form that Raphael will receive. So Raphael can, continue to do diligence and follow up on those items moving forward. And eventually, we'd like to get to the point where we have built this out, that we can have it as a resource, not just for us, but for other community members, and that community members can then provide updates or ask for additions onto that list as well. So in a future iteration, what we will have is something that a community entity could fill out to say, hey, I believe I should be on this list. That would then get vetted, to make sure that that is, something that would be appropriate for the community connectivity analysis through the city manager's office. So we can certainly get that information out to you here shortly with a form that you could fill out online to provide additional information. And like Raphael said, we do have the original spreadsheets too, and we'll continue. Raphael's going to be continuing to do a lot of effort in that area.
I'm essentially pulling the information from that original spreadsheet that you all provided me. And so I take the information from there, I add it on there, and then in the process of me doing my research, I just ran into something else. I just ran into another organization. I pull an organization from the spreadsheet that was provided to me from the research that you all gave me. And then in the process of doing that, I see that they're connected to someone else that wasn't previously on that spreadsheet. And so then I added on there as well. There's actually some organizations that I showed you on here that wasn't in the original spreadsheet. And so it's just reinforcing, that building and that connectivity that we're trying to put together in place to ensure that we know who's in our community and how they are essentially connected through all of us.
Great. Well, that looks terrific, and it looks like it's going to land us where we were hoping to go, where we were hoping to be. And we'll have these spin-off uses, not just for the city's connectivity, but this is going to serve a lot of purposes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Chair Jackson, on that, one of the things that we were building this for, one of many of the things that we were building this for was so that we could have what we were calling focus groups. And, I've identified on the agenda today more community dialogues after Commissioner Hedgewood brought up, at our last meeting that maybe focus groups wasn't the best title to call that. But what we'd like to do with taking this list and going back to, Raphael's kind of comments on the prioritization is to start setting up those community dialogues where we can, like the Lacey Youth Council earlier this year, we can invite community stakeholders into a Commission on Equity meeting to have a dialogue and conversation about ways that we can help each other in the community. And so we're going to be reaching out to you here shortly to find out an additional day that might work for you to have a community dialogue with our education providers. And that's one of the reasons that Raphael, has built out, the education is to really, be able to bring that back to the Commission on Equity as identified in past conversations as being a priority of what you all would like to see in front of the commission. And then, as we continue to build this out, bringing in other community stakeholders for that same point throughout the rest of the year.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in doing that, like I know like the city has the youth council, and so I don't know what we're calling it, maybe not focus groups, but when we meet with the education providers, what is, like, it's great to have conversations and I'm sure we'll have a really great conversation, but what is our like role? Like what's our goal and meeting with?
Yeah, Commissioner Silber, that's an excellent question. I think, part of it is, to understand what each group is, looking to do in the community and ways that we might be able to work together or even just become supporters or advocates for certain items, and ways that we might be able to plan, events together that would make sense for, furthering, both of our objectives from the city's standpoint, as well as, whatever education system the educators are coming from, but to understand what's going on, to build off of that, collaborate, and, hopefully continue to make our community a more welcoming environment for everyone.
Yeah, so with that, and I don't know if there is something like this. I mean, I know we worked with the Freddie Harris Lodge and so, doing events, so that's the city sponsoring them. So that's the city like giving these organizations money to put on events. Like what other things can the city do for these organizations? It'd be good to know like what all we could offer.
Yeah, excellent question. It's not always going to be, the city being a, fiduciary agent of providing
yeah,
funds,
sure.
right, or sponsoring certain events, but it might be something, and I'll just use the example, maybe this is something that we want to explore. On the Juneteenth celebration, there were multiple Juneteenth events going on. So having maybe, more kind of holistic planning, so that, certain events weren't competing with each other, for lack of a better word, or maybe that's not something we want to pursue, but it's just about getting the information out that those events are going on. Maybe it's about hosting continued community dialogues. We saw that the school district has been putting on the community cafes, and so maybe it's using both of our platforms and voices to collectively put on, critical conversations on racism in the community together. So it might not just be, funding, but it could be how do we collaborate with other types of events. And so it sounds like in anticipation of that conversation, you'd like a little bit more refined information on things that we might be able to do.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, I think, we're, using the city's platform for marketing is a big thing. But I guess I don't know until we have one of those meetings what would come of that. I just don't know, other than like sponsoring events and marketing, what they would be looking to
I
get.
think the word
I don't know. I
I think
haven't
the
understand
word we
this right.
used was partnering with, and it would look different entities. What kind of partnering? How can the city help, market, bolster, whatever, and it'll be different things for different folk. But the word was partnering with that we used frequently as we were leading up to the Juneteenth event. And I think that's an operable word that people can broadly use in describing you know, how the city, in this connectivity and, you know, all these kinds of groups, but partnering, you know, we can further develop that term, but that was the operative term we used as we're talking about reaching out to these groups and, you know, better connecting with them in different kinds of ways. And it was the first, I won't say first, but an initial major step out there that was very visible to people. But it was all in the spirit of partnering and being a part of the planning process and how can we help improve this, or, you know. But I think it opened up some dialogue that will just naturally evolve as other groups reach out to partner with the city as we move forward. Yeah.
I would say, so I'll use the Juneteenth event as a great example. And that was the conclusion of just my second week in the city. And at that point, you know, people that were at the event, they didn't know that. They're coming up to our booth and they're saying 41 years, 40 or so years of coming to this event. It's the first time I've seen the city of Lacey out here, like in the manner in which we were out there. And so they didn't know whether I was there for 2 weeks or 2 years or 20 years. They were thanking me, they were thanking the other employees that were there, saying thank you because it feels like my city cares. Because we've been hosting this event for 40 somewhat years. It's the first time that the city of Lacey's out here, that they're partnering with the Fred U. Harris Lodge. They're putting themselves out here. They're being with the people. And essentially it was, my city has my back in that sense. And it was something that some folks came and said, I didn't know that my city had my back until there's a City of Lacey sign out here. And wow, I didn't realize you guys had all these things. So let me talk to you or about what else the city has to offer. You know,
What other resources we don't
what
have.
other resources we don't have. And for us, so the word partnership, right? And so that's what it alludes to right there. And again, just using that event as one prime example really can open up in terms of what else can we as a city do when it comes to partnering, collaborating with our respective entities that we have in our communities, right? Folks are saying that, I've never seen the city out here. They didn't know that you guys had our back like this. I thought we would just put this event out here just on our own, and for them, it was uplifting. It was welcoming for some folks that I interacted with. I did a lot of talking that day. I drank a lot of water that day. And a lot of things that I was saying was because essentially of those things right there, everyone was very interested in walking up and they were glad that they see the city of Lacey out here as well. Because I've had some folks say that we've come out here and we never see any city association of any kind out here. It's just the lodge and that's it. And so that's where I feel like, moving forward as we continue to build this analysis and we continue to see who's out in our community, how can we better connect with our community? How can we better partner with our entities out here? How can we better provide a voice, a platform for issues that may be going on within our city, within our areas? And I feel like that's where it can start from that point. And I think moving forward, if we start from that point, then we can eventually get to other areas as well. But there's always got to be a start point. And I feel like that Juneteenth event, that was a wonderful start point.
Great. Looking at the agenda and looking at the time, let me ask this question. Well, does that complete your presentation? I don't want to
Shannon,
cut
that
you
does
short.
complete my
Since
presentation.
it's building and the process going on, I wanted to ask if the flag policy review, I don't know what the other timelines are, but can we move that to the next meeting? Because I really
So-
do want to get to item 5 here.
Okay.
And we've got 10 minutes left to go.
Commissioner, by policy, the meeting can go till 8:30. So if the commission wants to go to 8:30, we certainly can. In which case we could probably do the flag policy. However, if the commission wants to wait until the next meeting to take a look at the flag policy, we can certainly do that as well.
Okay. That's why I was asking, is there something that needed to happen? Is something happening somewhere else that some action we take on it tonight makes any importance It's a lot in it. It's not, I mean, the topic is simple, but it's a lot embedded in it that, you know, really has some implications for the city. And I'd not like us to just gloss over it if it really needs to be looked at. But what's the commission's feelings on doing it tonight or tabling it? I, for one, need to kind of end as close to 8 o'clock as possible for some other reasons. If it's not that pressing and time specific, would it be okay if we delay that to the next meeting so that we have time for item 5 here?
I agree. We could do that.
Okay, super.
I agree. It's almost 11 o'clock here, but.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that was one of the reasons I was trying to think of you, Annie. Yeah.
Thank you, thank
So
you.
I kind of hear the feeling and consensus that we can table the flag policy review until our next meeting, okay? And then that takes us to item 5, and we've been on this subject, but Cliff
Raphael, can you
has been
Stop sharing.
our representative on the planning committee with Juneteenth, in conjunction with Juneteenth. I mean, in conjunction with the Fred U. Harris Lodge. And I know he has a report prepared for us. And Kim is updating us on the police facility community advisory panel. So Cliff, if you could kick right on in.
Yes, and I'll go through this as quickly as possible. I was sitting here just really happy with the discussion surrounding the Juneteenth. I go, great, that's my report there. That's good, they're doing my job for me. So as we all know, the background, the Juneteenth was done in support of the Fred U. Harris Lodge number 7. And my conclusion is that it was a huge success. You know, the community experienced a well-organized and inclusive event, you know, that was, you know, pertaining to, you know, a historic event that happened here in the US. So pre-planning of the event, there was a committee that was established, and I represented the Commission on Equity. We had Shannon, our ACM was leading the city's side of the committee. And as we progressed, several staff members from the city were invited in and started to be a part of the committee meetings, and they brought their expertise to it, and they worked with us as it was developed and executed. So that was huge, bringing on those members. So the lodge gave us the background and, you know, brought us up to date as to what they've done before and what this thing looked like before. And at 40 years, and I've been in Lacey 30, but I never attended the event before. So it was all new to me. So I came in, I had no biases as I participated with this community. And so in working with that group and learning about what they've done, we were able to, they were open to some suggestions, some recommendations on how, as the city partnered with them and the commission worked with them, how the event could be enhanced, how it could be further developed in the community. And so there's just a few things that we were able to suggest, and they did accept. The Lacey's part in partnering with them and supported them involved, you know, the marketing plan, the development of the marketing plan. And that included, you know, the development of flyers, just College Street banner, announcements that went out in the utility bill and other things that all help people to learn about the event and put it on their calendar. There was a proclamation that the city gave to Fred U. Harris right here in this room, and I attended that event. It was an excellent, you know, activity where the proclamation that we had discussed in the commission and had given a thumbs up to was presented to Fred U. Harris. And I want to bring special attention to Council Member Ed Kunkel, who built this Juneteenth board, flag board that was on display here in the city during the city council meeting. and was displayed at the event. That was a great effort on his behalf, and it was a great board that we will be using, I'm sure, for future Juneteenth celebration. So I just wanted to bring that to his attention.
He gifted that to the lodge.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's their property now.
Mhm. And also, for the first time, as you mentioned, we suggested the information booths. They agreed to information booth. We limited the number this year, and so there were just 3 booths there. There was, the one with the city that we talked with for the Commission on Equity, the Police Explorers Program, and others were a part of that particular tent. There was a healthcare organization that had a tent, and then the Pearl Foundation of Puget Sound. And that's an organization that I'm a board member of. Its parent organization is the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. And so that is a 501c3 nonprofit foundation that works with them. And that organization, focuses on youth, education, scholarships, and mentoring in the community throughout the South Sound. So that organization was the first sponsor of the event. So we sponsored, as well as providing information. And then the highlight for me was the inclusion for the first time of speakers outside of the people on the program who brought history and did the Black National Anthem and prayer. We had speakers there, and that included the mayor, our mayor, who spoke, Mayor Ryder, and then the mayor of Tumwater also made a presentation. And then it was capped off with our own Congresswoman, Marilyn Strickland, who made a presentation. So we thought that was awesome. And she hung out, for a while with people and ate and interacted with them. So that was really good. And then to top things off, for the first time probably ever at a Juneteenth event, the Olympia Barber College was there and provided complimentary haircuts. I even got my beard trimmed. So they do a great job.
We saw.
Yeah, just quickly here, during the event, it was well organized and executed flawlessly by the lodge. The members were there early, set up, cooked, prepared food, did all those things. Their experience in doing this event was apparent in all areas of preparation and delivery of the event. And something I want to highlight is the fact that the members were welcoming to the guests. They interact with them. They really made everyone in attendance feel welcome. The food was awesome. The guests visited the booths throughout the day. Like Raphael said, we talked a lot during the day, and the speakers were great and received a warm reception by the crowd. And I also wanted to highlight the police department, the police chief and the deputy chief for their efforts. Security was a concern in light of all the things that have been going on across the country. So we talked about that in one of our committee meetings, and the city stepped in. So a representative from the police department came to the meetings and talked about some things they could do, doing a walkthrough of the park to make sure things are secure, nothing obvious is there. And that, security throughout the day was, it was visible, but it was subtle. It wasn't overt or police state at that during the event. They had a senior citizens volunteer group that were out there. They were visible. The chief and the deputy stayed there most of the day. That was really good and gave them a chance to really talk and interact with people. And so that helped us to feel so much safer, with that presence being there. So the overall assessment is that the event was a huge success, and our own commissioner, Kim Sauer, best summed it up with her feedback that she provided to us, to the commission. And I'll quote her. She said, "I've never seen such a well-prepared and organized event with so many volunteers from all races and generations, from public employees to private residents. If you actually describe the feeling of belonging in the community, I would definitely remember this feeling." So that was Kim talking about this event. And so I'd say that I think that Juneteenth was very successful, and will be even better years to come.
Thank you, Kim.
Can I say that
There, and Christina was there, and John dropped in, and we were just delighted. Thank you all.
I want to say that Chairman Jackson, you did a bang up job of speaking for the commission. Mhm.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciated your words.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate, just want to second what Cliff said and really thank the city for taking partnership above and beyond all wildest expectations for a first year out. The platform you all built, your sound system you provided, everything was magnificent. The signage, and there were people prior to the Saturday said, well, I really want to come, but I don't feel safe. So to be able to assure them that this is going to be a safe event with security in place, don't let that keep you from coming. And I can't think of anything that could have been added or done differently. It was tremendous. I talked with one of the head cooks, just trying to get an idea, how many people did you all actually serve? And his number was at about 850. He said we did 500 last year and we did about 250 more this time, for sure. But he estimated at about 850. I was not able to reach Melvin Butler, the head of the organization, who I think has a more official count. But my goodness, it was beyond expectations. As much as it was cloudy and cool, not a raindrop fell. So, and I also want to thank Cliff for his representation of the commission on that planning committee. He provided
Amazing.
a lot of input on a number of things, and the lodge really appreciated that input because it made a difference in the final dispensation of some things. A lot of meetings, extra meetings were involved on. Shannon, you were right there with him, representing the city, and so it couldn't have gone better. Raphael is a new employee, you know, no one could tell from how you just jumped in, chimed in, and did it whatever was called for. So it was a tremendous success all around, and just appreciate everybody's involvement. So again, thanks to everybody. Kim, you are serving on the Police Facility Community Advisory panel. Anything to share with us on that?
Yes, sure. I'll make it really quick. So there were about, I think about 20 of us were being briefed on the status. So the basically the Lacey Police Department was started in 1967 with 3 officers then. Then in about 25 years in the 80s, it expanded. Back then they had 15 officers. Now, fast forwarding in 2022, there's about 60 officers. And as you can imagine that building, we had a tour. We were grouped into 2 groups led by chief and the deputy chief. So we went in and had a tour of the police facility. And to be honest, I was kind of shocked how the facility was very, very tiny, outdated. The furnitures were very old, and that basically the officers were kind of like sardines, and not just officers, but staff. And so that, you know, evidence room, officers' locker room, very tight, smelled kind of old as well. And that the chief explained the polygraph room actually it's not even soundproof, which is not even meeting the requirement. And there was no secure area for interview, quote unquote, like prisoners. If you have people that you have to interview, they can hear, and it's just not safe, and not up to the current standard by no means. So that, you know, it'll cost about $40 million, I hear, and there will be multiple phases probably. But the goal for us, for the panels, was to see the reality and make an advocacy be an advocate for the need for this renovation and expansion, because it's, to me, it's not only the safety issue, but it's also the retention issue that now we all know that all cities are experiencing shore officers, and that, you know, if you have a same pay, why would you want to work in an area that it is so behind facility wise? So that is another, retention is another issue that we need to face, not only the safety issue. The parking lot and everything pretty much was really speaking loudly. There's a need for this renovation and expansion and moving to the new facility. So that's what I have to report. Personally, I like to see it happen because I think that we could do better. I was frankly shocked. I thought the city of Lacey was quite wealthy and was able to have a better facility, but it actually wasn't that the case. I don't know why it took so long for anyone to speak up for that. So that's what I saw.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for representing the commission on that advisory committee. Thank you very much. Keep us posted as it moves along.
I definitely will. Thank you.
Thank you. Under other commissioners, I would just comment on the item that was sent to us by way of, what was this? Public comment, dealing with the comprehensive plan update form, inviting members of the commission to be a part of that comprehensive planning process that's going on. I did reply and register for that first session, you know, because I've been a part of those comprehensive plans before. And it is so critically important that the community is involved, and they're really reaching out for diverse voices. And so hopefully some other persons on the commission see some fit to be a part. One is July 14th, and it's a Zoom. And then another one is in August. And for the time being, I did reply that I do plan to attend that on behalf of the commission. Anything else from any other commissioner, either here in person or online? If not, let's go to the director report.
Well, Chair Jackson, just building off of what you just said about comprehensive plans, I do want to make this body aware that, you know, the city will be undergoing its own comprehensive plan update in the next couple of years. And, you know, part of that process will be, you know, public engagement and outreach. So we will hear more about that shortly from our community development department on that. But in addition, I just wanted to highlight that currently the city is looking for planning commissioners, and planning commissioners will play an important role in, you know, the comp plan update. And they also play an important role in, you know, other land use and zoning policy decisions here at the city. They make recommendations very much like this board to the Lacey City Council on land use issues. So we do have a couple openings. So if you know anybody who would like to be a part of the Planning Commission, please have them apply online. They are looking for members currently. In addition, the Parks commissioners is also looking for commissioner. The Park Board of Commissions is looking for commissioners, and they deal with park policy. And so if you have any community connections out there who would like to serve on that board, that's another great opportunity for community members to be involved. I checked my email. I heard from Commissioner Hedgewood. It sounds like Commissioner Hedgewood is still having some technical issues. So we will bump Commissioner Hedgewood to the inspirational item, as the Chair Jackson pointed out earlier today in July. I just wanted to acknowledge that the city continues to you know, work on land acknowledgements, and that'll certainly be something that is coming back to the commission in the next couple of months for consideration. And then also to say today is June 27th, which means that this body has now been meeting for exactly 1 year. So I appreciate all of your time and your efforts. And I was thinking as we started this meeting, if you recall a year ago, it was in the middle of that 105, 6, 7 degree weather that we were having. And on the very first meeting in which everybody was attending remotely, the power cut out here at City Hall, and all of a sudden, all of us were dropped off except for the city attorney who had been working from their office outside of City Hall. And so I just kind of laughed thinking about the technical difficulties we had at that very first meeting. And here we are a year later, and it's not quite a science because we still had some technical difficulties at the start of this meeting. So I appreciate all of your time and efforts on the Commission on Equity, and I look forward to having many more conversations like the one we had today as we continue to move forward. So as part of that, I would also just like to take the opportunity to look at our 2022 work plan at just a very high level, not tonight, but at our next meeting, just to kind of report and check in where we're at and where we're going to continue the work that we're doing in anticipation of, meeting possibly in front of the Community Relations Committee like we did last year before our work plan in 2023. So kind of building towards that effort, doing a half-year check-in on where we're at, a check-in with the council committee, and then ultimately as we get to the stretch of 2022, so November, December, looking at our work plan for 2023. And with that, Chair Jackson, that is my report.
Great. Thank you. Is there anything else to come before the commission? Anyone online? Great. Seeing none and hearing none, we declare the meeting adjourned at 8:13.
All right.
Meeting.